Good afternoon, my name is Norry Leonard and I'm a primary school teacher and the creativity leader at Victoria Primary School. Before I was the creativity leader, I was the ICT coordinator and STEM leader in the school. And before that, before I was a teacher, I was a performer. So creativity has always been a huge part of my life. Now, I hope you don't mind, but I've changed the title of my presentation and discussion slightly. And the reason why I did that is originally we were looking at STEM and outdoor learning and expressive arts. But what I noticed when I was doing a little bit of research and a little bit of dinging about creative skills is that it's not only solely for those areas, but throughout the curriculum. And that is kind of what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you the ideas that I have about where education should be going. I want to share with you some resources and basically have a little bit of a discussion about creative skills in the classroom. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can be interactive and participate today. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to share with you a Padlet, and I would love for you to add some questions there or add discussions or resources that you might have or just comments about what you agree with or what you don't agree with during the presentation. There's also a Menti. Now, if you haven't used Menti before, it's just simply a question you answer with words or a phrase depending on the question. Now at the bottom of the screen there, if you go to on any device, menti.com, and put in that code, in a little bit there should be a question there and you can answer it for me and we can share all these at the end of the presentation. So, hi and welcome. The first thing I would like you to think about is, what is your image of a creative person? So in your mind, or using that Menti code down here, I want you to think of words and descriptions that might be a creative person. What do they look like? What are they doing? If they're a child, what job might they have in the future? If they're an adult, what job do they have now if they're a creative person? Are they a loud person? What kind of personality do they have? Are they a quiet person? And I'll give you about 30 seconds to jot down some of these ideas. Excellent. Okay. Now, if you were thinking of similar pictures like this, an artist, a singer, a fashion designer, a ballet dancer, you are correct. These are definitely creative people working within the creative industry. But if any one of you thought of builder, engineer, mathematician, web designer, computer programmer, scientist, gardener, teacher, extrovert, introvert, you are also very correct too. In fact, there are very few jobs that don't require some aspect of creative skills. Creative skills aren't solely used for the creative arts. For example, if we think of a scientist or engineer, they have to be creative in how they build or design or solve problems. For example, a teacher, they need to be creative in the way they teach. Sometimes changing the way we are teaching halfway through a lesson to meet the needs of the learners. We also need to be creative in the past year about how we engage, motivate and progress learners during the global pandemic. But when I talk about creative skills, here is what I'm talking about or thinking about. When we think about the word creativity or creative, there seems to be a little bit of a misunderstanding. And that includes me. Before I looked into creative skills, I always thought creativity and creative, always associate that with expressive arts. But creative skills can be used throughout the curriculum and beyond into the world of work, and also help with our mental health. Education Scotland define these creative skills as imagination, curiosity, problem solving and open-mindedness. Today I'm going to discuss why I think these skills are vital as core subjects of literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing. I'm going to show you some examples of how I use them in the classroom, and then give you a chance to discuss the next steps and perhaps a bit of a Q&A session if we have time. But first, let's tackle a few myths about creativity. As I said before, of course these skills lend themselves to expressive arts. However, I hope you can see, just mentioning those creative skills, I hope you can see the link between these and the core subjects of literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing. The best thing about most of these creative skills is that we are using these in our classrooms already. We just need to be more explicit about how we are using it. I believe if we can create this, we can have a more productive and engaging classroom for both teachers and learners. I'm just going to move my face a wee bit there. Okay, so let's think about extroverts. Extroverts are known for being creative or being loud on stage, or for being showing off. And sometimes when we think of a creative person, we think of extroverts. Like Luke O'Dell here. Luke O'Dell looks like an extrovert and dances and sings like an extrovert. They are creative. And this song as well, if you haven't heard it, it's an amazing song. Introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter. I believe in that as well. But often when we think of creativity, we associate these extroverts on stage. And Luke here, as I said before, is extremely creative. You can tell by that hat. But creativity isn't only for loud performers. They're also for those introverts too. Most introverts are creative. Just because they're not loud or demonstrating their creativity on the outside, they may be developing thoughts, ideas, or perhaps ways of changing the world. As a teacher, I love this quote that my face is over right now. I'll move my face there. Ding dong. There we go. And this is from someone called Susan Cain. She wrote an amazing book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts. I recommend you read that. It's brilliant as well. And it changed my attitude towards introverts and being an extrovert. And the quote is, as you can see here, there's zero correlation between being the best talker and having the best ideas. This helps me remember that everyone in the class is creative, but they may have different ways of engaging. They may have different ways to show creativity. We need to be aware of all of them. Excuse me. There's also a myth that you're either an academic person or a creative person, or you're a left side brain or a right side brain. This is false. As we've seen from previous slides, we need our creative skills in mostly every job. Whether you want to be a successful academic, or a scientist, mathematician, you need these creative skills. Or do you want to be a new TikTok star? You need to be creative. In my day, and I know I sound old, in my day it was either academic or creative. I wasn't good at English, so I fell into music. I wanted to be a musician, so I didn't really bother with English. And I wasn't pushed as a teacher. I wasn't pushed by my teacher, sorry. And I wish someone had told me that I really needed to have both to be successful. Had to learn that in later life. But I've got some great news for you. Everyone is creative. When we are children, we learn to build towers through play, learn from our failures, and create make-believe lands from our imagination. But suddenly, when we're getting a little bit older, we stop and we get more serious about learning. The problem is that it's an important lesson to fail. Perhaps the most important lesson. When someone falls, or something falls, how do we build it back up again? We use these creative skills. We're curious about how it is built, what happened the last time. We learn from our mistakes. Now, I'm going to play you a video from Ken Robinson, well, Sir Ken Robinson, who explains all this slightly better than me. Hold on while I just get it. There we go. Here he is. And he should be popping up on your screens pretty soon. Hello, Sir Ken. Thank you for coming in. There we go. I'll move my face to the side, yeah.
When my son was 4 in England, actually he was 4 everywhere, to be honest. I mean, for being strict about it, wherever he went, he was 4 that year. But he was in the Nativity play. Do you remember the story? No, it was big. It was a big story. Mel Gibson did the sequel. You may have seen it. It was Nativity 2. But James got the part of Joseph, which we were thrilled about. We consider this to be one of the lead parts. We had the place crammed full of agents and T-shirts. You know, James Robinson is Joseph. He didn't have to speak, but you know the bit where the 3 kings come in? They come in bearing gifts, and they bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This really happened. We're sitting there, and they, I think, just went out of sequence. Because we talked to the little boy afterwards and said, you know, are you okay with that? And they said, yeah, why was that wrong? They just switched, I think that was it. Anyway, the 3 boys came in, little 4-year-olds with tea towels on their heads, and they put these boxes down. The first boy said, I bring you gold. And the second boy said, I bring you myrrh. And the third boy said, Frank sent this. What these things have in common is that kids will take a chance. You know, if they don't know, they'll have a go. Am I right? They're not frightened of being wrong. Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong. And we run our companies, by the way, we stigmatize mistakes. And we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities. Picasso once said this. He said that all children are born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. I believe this passionately that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. Or rather, we get educated out of it. So why is this?
That was the late Ken Robinson there. And if you haven't seen this video on his follow-up, I've put it on the Padlet so you can have a watch of it after the presentation. And I really urge you to watch it. There is so many interesting ideas that he comes up with. And talking about how creativity is the way forward in education. And that we are still teaching towards the kind of industrial way of teaching. Now, when I first moved back up to Scotland from England, I was so glad to get away from that pressurised assessment and achievements and making sure that every child was making progress in every single lesson. It was exhausting. And I was so glad when I came up to Scotland, because I work in an amazing school. Victoria Primary School is an amazing school and is so lovely and so creative, and the curriculum for excellence can be so creative too, given the right circumstances. But I'm sad to see that after this global pandemic, there is so much pressure to get the children or to get the learners back up to numeracy and literacy and making sure that they know, and I know these are vital skills, but we also need to make sure that they've got those creative skills to help them with things like a global pandemic. So we need to remember that although we're constantly under that pressure to ensure literacy and numeracy, we must not forget those creative skills, and that sense of curiosity and imagination does not get lost to education. Education should be an adventure, and we should be the ones leading the way. And Sir Ken Robinson says at the end of one of the videos that I've put up, he was saying that everything else doesn't matter. We are the leaders. As soon as we close that door to our classroom, or keep it open just now because of COVID, we are the leaders. We are the education. So maybe it's time to think creative. I don't know. Okay, speaking of imagination, I want you to use your imagination now. So you can use that Menti at the bottom there, 9123 or 3980. And yeah, okay, I'm going to move my head there because it looks like I've got some kind of hat on. There we go. Let's move you down to about here. There we go. Okay, I'd like you to think about the future. You can use Menti or you can just jot things down. I want you to imagine a future where houses are massive spheres that can be moved anywhere in the world, where 20% of us live on Mars, and that the UK government is run not by a person, but by a social media giant called TikTok. Here's a couple of questions for you. What new jobs do you think would be available? What jobs would be redundant? Would teachers still have a job? How do these big spheres move? What does TikTok want us to do every morning? Very interesting. So while you're just jotting down a few ideas, answer these questions or give me some comments about it as well. Using your imagination, being curious about it. What questions come up in your head? What problems come up in your head? And while you're doing that, I'm just tell you why I used this slide. So I asked these questions for two reasons. And I show this slide for two reasons. Reason one is, isn't it a fantastic hook for a creative project? I mean, how much imagination is there? Imagining the future. There are so many things to be curious about. How are they going to get to Mars? Who goes there? How did TikTok get the power? Would it be the same in Scotland? What about Boris Johnson? What happened to him? Think of all the problems that need to be solved as well. Some of you might be writing some of them down. What about the ethical problems? We need to keep an open mind for that as well, do we? And we can start thinking about the numeracy and maths and literacy. I mean, the maths would be spheres, would be 20%. What is 20% of Scotland or the class or the school? Literacy, what about the reports? What is Mars really like? Can you imagine what the first night on Mars would be like? And health and well-being, what about those ethical and moral debates. Who gets to go to Mars? Who would want to go to Mars? Why? Why not? And the second reason why I show this is that it's not entirely unbelievable. We can see that future a little bit. I mean, maybe not the spheres, but definitely Mars. Perhaps TikTok as well. The world's going there, I'll tell you that for free. But Mars, there are people going up there, or well, there's robots going up there just now to see if it's habitable. And you might be sitting there going, no, come on. A future like this? No. But can you imagine someone came back and said to you at school that the world's largest taxi company in 2021 would own no vehicles? The world's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. Or that strange man on Apprentice USA was going to be the most powerful man in the world. I would be curious about that. Perhaps a little bit scared too. But this is our present. There's even a job called a vlogger. A vlogger. It's actually a job. And you can make money now from opening boxes online. How creative is that? To find a niche and to make money from it. Believe me. If you don't believe me, look it up. Box opening videos. The world of work is changing. Does education need to change too? And please don't think I'm saying that we should be not teaching literacy and numeracy skills and health and well-being, and we should be focusing on things like app development and vlogging. No, because the chances are that when we get there, vlogging and app development will be into something else. What I'm saying is that those vital skills in literacy and numeracy and health and well-being need to be combined with that creative skills so we can use them in the future. We need academic and creative skills to be successful. So the question is, how do we start? Well, the great news is that you're using it already. I really doubt that anyone here isn't planning a lesson that requires an element of creative skills, but you just need to be more explicit about what it is and how they can achieve it. I simply in my planning have a little column in my numeracy and literacy plans that I can note down what creative skill they are focusing on during that lesson. And yeah, throughout my planning, that's all I put. Every lesson should have an element of curiosity, imagination, problem solving and open-mindedness. Of course it should. All these 4 elements are key to learning if we think about it. I've also got these little characters here. Now, these little characters here look really nice, but don't think I'm some kind of computing design specialist or anything. I made them in something called Adobe Spark. If you haven't used Adobe Spark yet, please go on. It's free. You get, well, most of it's free, and you get lots of designs and templates where you can make amazing posters. You can have little things like this that can help with your teaching as well. But my class have these little designs on the whiteboard, the interactive whiteboard. Sometimes I'll draw them, not a very good drawer, but sometimes we'll draw it on the board so that they know what they're using for. And I like these designs because just from the picture, it's very accessible for everyone in the class. Curiosity is got the question marks coming out the head, thinking about it. You know, imagination is thinking as well, but not questioning, but just imagining. as well, so it's accessible for everyone in the class. But the first lesson is, how do you teach these creative skills? How do you teach curiosity? So first of all, we look at the words in the dictionary. What does it actually mean? And when I teach using that, I make sure that they have access to whatever they need. For example, if it's a literacy lesson, it'll be a dictionary or an iPad or other resources that they could access if they're curious about something. If it's imagination, the class asks a lot of what-if questions. So I'm going to share with you an example way back at the start of the year in September, when we just had come back from the summer holidays. So it was a massive thing, and it still is, but Black Lives Matter was huge when we come back. And during the first weeks of term, I asked the class what they understood about Black Lives Matter and why it was being spoken so much about in the news and in school. And what I realised that there were some misunderstandings about the movement, which I was keen to address. We problem solved how to work out how to be creative in our understanding, and we also problem solved how we can perhaps make a difference in the school. And we looked at lots of different things. We were curious about how we could work it out. We used our imagination, and we imagined maybe having a sleepover or a sponsored bake sale to raise awareness. But the problem solving aspect of it is because of COVID, we couldn't do any of it. And someone in the class said, what if we were to make a mural? And that had inspired the entire class. We didn't just want to make a mural that just was in the classroom, because not many people would see it. We don't have many visitors. So we wanted to make something that the whole school and perhaps the community could see. And that is when, with careful consideration with senior management and the cleaners, to make sure pen comes off windows, we drew this. We drew this on the window, and each child designed and wrote something on a heart, and we placed it on there. Now the impact of that is that, well, the class were able to share their views on it and understand it, but also it's a great talking point for teachers, other children in the class, in the school. This mural that's on the wall here overlooks the school and the local community. You can see the houses in the background. So it's an amazing piece of art that gets people talking about it, which is exactly what they wanted. So let's look at something like literacy. Literacy using creative skills. I mean, we know the vital creative skills of reading, writing, listening and talking. Of course we need those skills as well, but where can the creative skills come in there? Well, we can have open-mindedness in the listening and talking and the debate, and through peer assessment in pretty much every lesson. And I'm sure you already teach curiosity when it comes to words through reading and writing. What does this word mean? What kind of root is the word? And the one at the top here with the little devil menace thing is something, a website called Vocabulary Ninja. And if you haven't been on that already, this is an excellent teaching resource, completely free. There's a word of the day or 2 words of the day every day, and they share this image here, which is actually a PowerPoint presentation. And as you can see there, you've got things like word of the day, word class, definition, synonyms, antonyms, prefixes, suffixes, rhyming words, link words as well. I will say with some of the rhyming words, yeah, Scottish accent, they don't really rhyme sometimes, but that is an excellent opportunity to talk to your class about why it doesn't rhyme. And additionally, we can also inspire our learners through using our imagination. When I teach through imagination in literacy, I always start with a what if. What if Augie from Wonder was in your school? What if Narnie was through our door? What if there was a teleport in our classroom floor to a different time zone? And through that imagination and curiosity, there becomes problems. How can we present this work? How can we write the best story we can? We're going to have a discussion at the end of this presentation, so it'd be good to see how you can incorporate these creative skills in your planning or your lessons, or perhaps you already do. It'd be fantastic to hear what you think. Now, in numeracy and maths, I use a lot of different resources, but this one is one that I really like and would like to share with you. Now, you might have heard of it before, but it's called C3 Before Me. And C3 Before Me, for those of you who have not come across it before, is that each learner needs to see 3 different people before they come up to me. It sounds amazing, doesn't it? So instead of them sitting down at a task and just going, I don't get it, they've got to try and work it out themselves before they come to me, using 3 things. So it could be, for example, they've got we've always got an iPad. We're quite lucky. We've got an iPad free in the classroom at all times, which is really good. Only one though, so one person can use it at a time. But if they're looking at something and they don't really get it, they can go to an online tutorial, which I've selected as well. Apply previous learning. We've got working walls. We've got their jotters. Crowdsource it, speak to a group of people, speak to a group. Hello group, I don't get this, can someone help me? Asking a friend, looking in a book if it's numeracy as well. And the one there that says Google it as well. And now we were talking about Googling it and how you can't always trust about it. Everything that's on Google, everything that's online as well, which is a very important thing. But you can also see that these creative skills in here, such as problem solving, for problem solving you need to be able to solve the problems by yourself. And of course, if someone needs support, I am there as well. But if we think about these creative skills in numeracy and maths, they are vital for our learners to be able to use the numeracy and math skills in new and unfamiliar situations. For example, the learners may have an excellent memory and knowledge of times tables, but without having practiced the skills of problem solving and imagination, they'll really not be able to use it in the world of work or beyond. Now, health and well-being, that's also a key area where creative skills can be used throughout our school years. We teach vital lessons to help learners deal with life, and our creative skills can be used during class discussions regarding ethical and moral debates. For example, problem solving as well. How can we make sure that all our peers and all our colleagues are happy? And how can they express their feelings in a safe way? Or how can we make sure that we keep up with physical education during a global pandemic? Imagination could be, how can we create a dance program for the rest of the school? And you can see that open-mindedness, listening to others' views and discussing them. So maybe sometimes you don't fully agree, but that is a great opportunity to use open-mindedness. So through the teaching of creative skills, I've noticed a decrease of low-level disruption. A decrease. I'm saying I still get the the learners coming up to me saying, someone looked at me funny. But as the majority of the class are more curious about their learning and they're leading the learning themselves, they attain more of the information, which is another advantage. And as I'm encouraging the class to discuss with their peers to try and find the answer to a problem, I'm noticing more collaboration. On the other side of it, because I've inspired curious, independent lessons, sometimes they go off on the wrong path. They get lost in the learning rabbit hole. Now, as leaders of the learning, we know where the path is, so we just need to guide them back on that path. I've also noticed the need to differentiate has decreased. Of course, there are learners that require a different level of support in the classroom, but they too are learning their creative skills and finding ways to access information and resources. Additionally, with the majority of the class using their creative curiosity skills, that leaves me more flexible to support and challenge groups where necessary. Yes, it's our job to prepare our young people in the curriculum and ensure they have the correct skills to help them progress through school. But we also prepare them for a world that's unknown, an ever-changing and evolving world. These creative skills not only help them with that, but they are needed to help with their mental health. And if the past year has shown us anything, mental health is extremely important. We are not sure where the future will take us, but one thing is guaranteed. Knowing these creative skills will not only help them through school, but also help them through life. Parents, teachers, learners, we all build towers. Sometimes they fall down. Having these creative skills give them the confidence and mental strength to build it back up again. Thank you very much for listening. I would love to hear from you now. I'm going to move my face again. So, do you think this could work in your classroom? Do you see the benefit? Are there issues with incorporating creative skills within the classroom? Has anyone got any examples or any concerns or any worries? What I'm going to suggest is that this bit down here, the Padlet, the URL takes you to a Padlet where you can answer some of these questions, you can add some resources, you can ask your own questions, you can comment, you can add some pictures or videos or anything you think might find useful. So I'm thinking maybe we have a little break for 10 minutes and then we can come back and have a little bit of professional dialogue. I will see you in a little bit.